Scott, the issue that we brought forward was
We could, yeah.
Let me just tell him.
Okay. We'll just give him the option. This is one of the first later agendas we've had in a long time.
Well, the first December one was pretty good too. Isn't it
You're right,
good?
yeah.
I wouldn't have-
You always pay the price if you have it.
Oh, he's here. Yeah.
It's there.
See you here, you sounded like that one.
Really?
Yeah, you sound terrible.
There's more attitude than anything else. It's tough coming back from a holiday and then, yeah. I'm surprised with everybody who's been getting sick.
How's it going over there? Good?
Oh,
Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Calling to order the January 2024 meeting of the Southborough Select Board. And the first item on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for people to offer a comment on an item that is not on the agenda, and we try to keep comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here or in the virtual audience who wishes to make a public comment? Okay. I don't see any hands in the audience. So then the next item on our agenda is under schedules appointments. Parul Sharma has applied to serve on the pilot committee. We like to come and just introduce yourself and tell us, I mean, we have your citizens activity form and volunteer form in the packet, but it'd be nice to take a seat, just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in serving on the committee.
Thank you for considering my application. We have lived in Southborough for 7 years, me and my husband, on 4 Winter Street. And Patty is our neighbor. And through her and through Jim, we have learned about all the town activities that go on and participated in the town hall meetings. And so this was an opportunity that I thought was more up my experience, because I've worked both in nonprofit organizations like Harvard, and now I work in a profit organization as Stellus. And I live in this town.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Kathy, why don't you begin? Do you have any questions?
I don't think so. Patty has recommended you, so
Thank you.
that's more than halfway there. So no, I look forward to working with you. I'm on committee with you, so
Thank you very
I'm
much.
gonna meet next week. So no, I think it's great that you want to do this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. I speak frequently with Ms. Sharma's husband at the transfer station, so I know the family. I don't claim to know her well, but and Patty's recommendation is good for me, so I support this application. Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering. I'm sure you're gonna do a great job.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move to appoint Parul Sharma to the pilot committee with a term expiring 6/30/2024.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Okay.
All those opposed? All right, thank you.
Congratulations.
But you need to have your instructions. So you need to go down and be sworn in by the town clerk, and
He may.
You may be there right
you
now.
may still be there, so.
So you might check that. Yep.
He usually needs the appointment letter, so
Oh,
I know that's not done yet.
okay.
Okay,
So that may be, so I hate to say this because you've had trouble with the email, but we will send you an email with your appointment letter. You can then bring, that'll be coming to you tomorrow. You can then bring that into the town clerk's office and he can swear you
Okay, and if it doesn't come, I can come straight to the town.
straight to the town hall.
We just
Yeah.
want to make sure you're available for the meeting next week. So,
yeah.
okay.
And the next item on the agenda is consideration of appointing Coy Nguyen to the Economic Development Committee. All right, well, your timing is
Hi.
really good.
Are you?
Good, good.
Sorry, I'm a bit late.
That's
All
okay.
right, perfect.
So, basically same drill. If you can just introduce yourself to us and, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I, texted with Rob Anderson yesterday and he'd be happy to have, another member to fill out the committee here. So, just please tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in the serving on the Economic Development Committee.
Right. So my name is Coy Nguyen, and I've been in Southborough roughly 10 now. I moved here, bought the house in 2013, so
Okay.
10 coming up. I love the town. I'm a father of 3 children, all in public school system. Love the community and the neighbor that I'm interact with. Hopefully, contribute some of my time to the town. And reading through all the description of different communities, I do have an interest in participate in the kind of conversation that the economics development committee is making, which is making sure that we stabilize the residential tax base within the town, right? Through different conversations, I think it's time for me to sign up and hopefully enjoy the conversation with different members of the committees and get to know people in town more at the same time. So that's really my goal.
And have you had a chance to watch or attend any of the EDC meetings or speak to other EDC members about the committee yet?
So I have watched one video of the recording.
Okay,
I definitely looking at some of the material has been posted on the committee website.
okay, good.
So I'm not saying 100% no in-depth the conversation, but I'm familiar with the kind of the topics that can be.
And I'm sorry, can you remind me what your background is in terms of your job and your profession?
Yep. So I'm by education, I'm an economics, political science major. I do have an MBA in information management. My current job has nothing to do with econ, but then I'm a director of data engineering. I'm managing data project for a company in Boston. Kind of related, but not hit directly. But I believe that, with the understanding, hopefully with the data that we have now, hopefully we see something differently within the economic development.
Maybe Al, do you have any questions for Mr. Nguyen?
Sure. First, thank you for volunteering. We need all the help we can get, and we need to grow our commercial and industrial base because it's in all of our economic interest as taxpayers. Have you looked at how we could further our recruitment of potential customers, or I'm going to call them customers? How do we recruit people to come to Southborough to start businesses or to rent the empty space on Route 9? Have you thought in any detail about that?
I did not thought
Okay.
any detail, but obviously, I think commercial follows certain interests, right? We just need to know what that is. And I think the statement of the Economic Development Committee is saying, obviously you need to know those interests, but to balance that out with the residential growth of Southborough at the same time, I think it's important, right? I believe that promote a certain images about the town will certainly make the commercial more appealing. But honestly, as the residential base grow, I have no doubt that we can come up with ways to attract more commercial base into into the town, because with the residential base growing, we definitely gonna need different types of services that may be attractive to a certain type of commercial, right? So,
Yeah, no, I view this as a critical activity because the commercial and industrial base is, in portfolio terms, there are cash cows.
right.
They consume far less services than they pay for. And versus, those of us who live in nice houses,
Right, right.
it's the other way
right.
around.
Yeah,
So we need your help to help convince the world that we are open for business and friendly.
right. Perfect. Thank you.
Marguerite?
Nothing except, it's a good situation to be creative with. The economy's changing, everything's changing, so, welcome aboard, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Nice.
I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. I bet it will be a good additional challenge on top of whatever I'm having in my life right now. With children, with,
Yep.
Yes.
being parents,
Yeah.
stuff like that, so.
This might even be more complex than that, actually.
Yeah.
Potentially. But again, thank you for volunteering. I think it's an interesting position, a lot of upside here, as Al suggests, very important. And I think one of the challenges historically has been finding a way to get some wastewater capacity along
Right.
Route 9, which is a limiting factor for growth for many businesses. And we continue to look at that. I think there's some studies underway to look at options there. So again, as Marguerite suggests, I think that there's opportunity for creativity with some of this stuff. And we actually in the past have reached out to local businesses more actively than we have recently, partly because we've had some change in terms of the economic development coordinator position. But I think it would be great to get more involved in that in terms of talking to the business community one-to-one basis more actively and find out what people are thinking and help them with plans to expand and draw other businesses into town. So I think there's a great upside here and appreciate your willingness to step in and add some energy to that process. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no promises, but I think,
Yep.
like I say, I would like to enjoy the problem as much as I could. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
So this is great. You're willing to do this. It sounds like your background would allow you to be very creative because we need creativity, as Mr. Cybers said. We're behind the 8 ball because of the lack of a public sewer system, right? It's a sleepy little town, but we need our businesses to thrive. We need more business in this town. We've got room for them. So I am really glad that you're willing to do this. And I'll give you another specific problem that I think is kind of in your bailiwick. We've got a train station here, but we have no way to get people from the train station unless they have the car
Right.
to, for example, the business on Route 9. I'm actually in that boat right now. I've got an employee that we have to pick up every day. We have to take turns going to pick her up and take her to the train station because that's the only way she can get there. Uber doesn't work, cabs don't work. So we've got to find a way to get transportation from the train station to the businesses too. So you can get more people that will be willing to work in Southborough. So there's a specific thing for you to work on.
We should talk to Uber and see what they can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's an answer here. We just got to do it. And maybe get businesses to pitch in as far as, because they need people here too. See what we can do. So you've got your work. There's plenty of work to be done in this. So I hope that it will work with your schedule. But yeah, we need creative people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and see what they can get done.
Right.
It's very important.
All right. If there are no further questions, I move that we appoint Boy Nguyen to the Economic Development Committee for a term to expire June 30, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to follow up with Leah, coordinator from now on.
Where you,
So you will get an email tomorrow with an appointment letter.
Okay.
You then need to come in and see the town clerk as soon as you can to get appointed. Then you're off and running. We'll get you a town email, get you set up, and you're one of us.
All right. Thank you.
all right, thank you,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Okay. So before we move into reports, one thing that we could, if people are interested, advance on the agenda. So Bill Cundiff is here and available to speak to the item on the agenda, request for use of engineering funds for Atwood Street site. So if we advance this on the agenda, we could have Bill provide a little more background of this, and that allows him to
Go home.
go home earlier. Does that sound okay? All right. Does it make sense to just bring Bill over and have him,
Sure.
okay.
There he is.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Bill, how are you?
Good.
So we've got in our packet a memo from, I think it's from, yes, from Mark, that explains, the follow-up from the December 27 Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, where I know you had reached out to Pear. I was confused, Par or
Par.
Pear?
Par.
Par for the course.
Yeah. Okay, Par. About getting some, a professional approach to the lead paint issue that we talked about at that meeting. And so the memo is asking for to use $3,000 from the engineering article, which currently has a balance of a little over 25,000. But so can you provide a little update on what you've heard about kind of the scope of work that can be done and the cost?
Sure. So, as you know, in transferring the property from the town control, we want to make sure that it's a clean site. Often, water tanks from this era have issues with lead paint having been used, and during sandblasting and repainting the tank over the years, there may be an issue with excess lead found in the soils on the site. So to alleviate that problem, the $3,000 that you're talking about is a quote that we got from Par, which would allow us to do some lead sampling of the soils and some cost associated with the collection of those samples. That would be the total of $3,000. Since we had that initial conversation with Par, we have learned that there may be a potential, and we know very little about the specifications for the tank throughout the years and its use over that time frame. But we have learned that during that era, there may be an opportunity for them to have used some PCBs associated with the tank, whether it be in the paint itself or in some materials used in the construction. So that may be a concern also. So I did ask Par to give us an updated price proposal, and they said that if they collected 12 samples for PCBs, that would be about $100 per sample for the analysis. No additional cost for the collection because they'll have a person out there anyway. So that would take the total from the $3,000 we discussed earlier for the lead up to $4,200 for the lead and PCB analysis. Conversations, we don't want to head down one path and then have to backtrack, in my opinion. I think it'd be most prudent to dispose of this question at this point so that it doesn't come up at a future date, which may cause more problems than we want.
Thank you for the legwork that you've done and getting this information on the costs and the scope. This seems like a prudent thing to do from my perspective. And also, this is what the engineering article was really kind of made for, was these periodic things that come up where we could use have kind of a flexible need for engineering services and things like that. Anyone have any particular? Yeah,
Makes sense
Marguerite?
to me, yeah.
I was told by one of the abutters that when the tank was brought down, it was felled like a tree toward the north. So I'm wondering if Par does the samples, how wide an area will they do? Will they do it around the base of the tank, or will they do it out toward the north where it fell? Or the other part of it is, I think it was sandblasted and repainted a couple of times. I'm just concerned with getting a decent sample. I don't want to tell them how to do their job, but I'm just wondering if it's just around the base of the tank, it might not be hitting enough area.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chairman. It's not so much where the tank came down. The contamination would have resulted from either the construction of the tank and or the sandblasting and repainting process. So, normally it would be concentrated where the tank was originally located. Now, given that, I do want to point out that this is a preliminary assessment, okay? So let's say they go out there and they find that there were either lead or PCBs. They would then have to do a comprehensive assessment to find out the volumes of soils that might be contaminated, or the areas that you're talking about, what areas might have been affected on the site. It'd be a more detailed and closer look at the site. This is really to determine whether or not there are these items on the site.
And when last we had, I looked at this, I think we were talking about a few weeks' time. Is that still the case?
Yes, 2 weeks is a normal turnaround. You could pay a
Okay.
premium and have a faster turnaround, but standard turnaround is 2 weeks.
Okay. We don't have a choice to do this. I'm fully in support.
Okay, so are you asking then for up to 4,200?
That's the proposal I got from PAR,
Okay.
yes.
All right,
So, Mr. Chair, oh, I'm sorry.
yes, Al?
I'll move.
Well, just before, does anyone else have any questions? Al, Kathy?
I have a really important question.
Okay.
So Bill, what the heck is the motorcycle on there for?
Motorcycle.
It's
That's
better than
yours?
looking at my face, I guess.
Okay, all right. Just want to get that clear.
Is that an official town vehicle now? This sounds reasonable to me, so I support it.
All right. I move that the select board approve an expenditure not to exceed $4,200 from the engineering services article to do testing for lead, paint, and PCBs on the site at Wood Street site of the former water tank.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Bill,
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Okay. So next under reports, under chair's report, just two quick things I'll mention. Most of you are probably aware of. The work on the St. Mark Street Park is done for this season. A lot of great progress has been made, and just one thing I wanted to make people aware of that there was a comment about recently is that so the plants that were planted there obviously were planted in the middle of December, but Belco, the landscape company that put them there, has assumed liability for if they do not survive the winter, that they will come back at their own expense and replant those. And also, as some of you may have seen, at our last meeting, we approved a 90-day interim license, class 2 used auto dealer license for RZND, but apparently if you've gone to the site now, they apparently have left the location, and the property is now up for lease, which is, I can say, was not anticipated for when we considered this last time. Does anyone else have anything to add under a members report? And so Mark, you have an update on the fire chief search?
Yes, so at the last meeting, the board authorized me to execute a contract for the search process up to $20,000. Anything over 10 requires three quotes, not formal bid process, but quotes. The holidays have slowed down. I have 2, waiting for the 3rd, should receive that this week. And then we'll move forward to engage the consultant for the search process. I did attend the inauguration for the new Marlboro mayor yesterday, and spent some time talking with Fire Chief Kevin Breen, and so picking his brain a little bit about the process. He was involved in helping us find Chief Achilles. So
and was very helpful in that process.
He was very helpful in
Part of
that
the committee
process.
there.
He's a good resource.
Yep.
He's a good resource.
Mark, do we have to take the low bidder for this?
Yes,
We're required to,
you do.
unless there's some other extenuating circumstance.
Unless there's,
Part.
so it's responsive and responsible. So unless there's something there that, and quite honestly, there's not a whole lot of firms that continue to do this
Yeah.
work. So most of them do check that box. It really comes down to price.
So as far as process from this point on, you'll get the
Yes.
third bid,
Yes,
right? Now you've got three, you'll pick the lowest one,
yes,
and then who signs the contract?
I do.
Okay, so you can go ahead without another meeting and get the process going.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. And I'll report back to the board on that, so you're aware of.
His last day is February what?
His last day is February 7th.
On the consent agenda, I'm gonna hold A. I have some minor edits to the minutes for December 19th. Anyone have any items they wish to hold on the consent agenda?
Yeah. C, building department.
Okay. Any others? I move that the board approve consent agenda items B, D, E, and F.
And G,
Um,
do we have a G?
are we looking at a different version than?
Oh, F, sorry. Okay. I'm missing one here. That's an old version. I'll second that. Thank you.
Phantom one.
All those in favor? Okay. So A, the minor edits that I would have on line 14 after she, instead of just she has no primary care provider, I would say she has no primary care provider who accepts Aetna. And on line 27, I'd say Mr. Dennington asked about the figure of $1 million in the slides presented. Any other edits?
Yeah, line 104, DPW.
Yep.
Unless we have a new department. That's it.
Okay. Any others? I move that we approve the December 19 minutes as amended.
Second,
All those in favor?
Mhm.
Okay, and Sam, did you hold the
yeah, building department fee
Yes,
schedules.
yes.
Just to reinforce my understanding of what we're doing here is trying to get in line with other communities around us. And I think that's a good objective, and I certainly support that. Last time there was conversation about the $50 reopen or renewal fee for the permits. And my sense was there was potential for that as a revenue raiser, which I don't think is the right concept there, in the sense that I think it makes sense to actually have a fee for reopening a permit that's lapsed. But it also sounded like there's a lot of underbrush out there in the permit world where it's not clear some of the permits have lapsed or not, et cetera. So I know we have new, very capable staff in the building department. So I'm assuming part of the process is to work through that backlog and sort out clearly what needs to be potentially renewed, what doesn't, and make sure we have a clear picture of the current
That's the
status.
that's the first part of the process, is basically to do that human outreach to, to all of the
Permit
all of
holders,
the
yeah.
permit holders. And again, most of them are contractors, not residents. And to engage them, I think it's as much a convenience to charge the $50 for the opening fee rather than having somebody go back to the beginning and start again.
Right.
So, and Kelly O'Brien, is just come on and she's willing to dig in on this. This isn't new for her. She's done this in other communities.
Yep.
As well. So.
And Mark, I guess I see this as one of a series that we're now uncovering of situations where we may have done things differently in the past. And it's important, I think, to communicate to people going forward, and in some cases have a transition process for the old world to the new world here.
Mhm.
Make sure people understand what we're doing here. And if, for example, I don't know if this is the fact, but just sort of hypothetically, if we've not been worrying about this stuff historically, and people, have had lapse permits and come in and restart a project and don't have to pay the fee, there could be some backlash there. But again, I think it makes good sense to have the reinstatement fee. And if we have an expiration, we ought to enforce it.
Right.
And so again, I don't know, what the right process is for that, but I assume that our building inspector, building department people will be sensitive to that issue.
And
if it turns out-
consistency is important too,
Yeah.
but and to make sure that people feel like they've been informed
Right.
so that they have this, this is what it says and this is where you can find it. And so everybody understands what the rules of the road are,
Yep.
when you start out on
Yep.
that path of a permit.
I can conceive of a contractor, let's say, who, has a bunch of lapsed permits, but in the past, that's not been an issue and they've come in and restarted things and no problem. Not being happy to find, oops, the rules have changed. But I think hopefully as the department goes through the process of communicating people, they'll figure out, what's going on there and find a way to make that a relatively smooth transition. But I think ultimately this is the right answer. We ought to be operating this way and people ought to be informed before they get the permits.
Right.
Here's how it works.
And I think it'll be applied with some level of sensitivity in terms
Good.
of trying to,
Yep.
to get caught up.
Good. Thank you.
So to me, the key, again, I'm focused on the reopening permit. $595 still sounds like a lot to me to be out there in a town this size. But I'll put my skepticism aside. The fact that the sentence in here that to me is important. Building staff will immediately commence reaching out to each individual permit holder to determine the status of the permit and whether a reopening fee is, but in other words, we're going to talk to them and figure out what's going on and and then act accordingly. So that is key to me to doing this right, given it is a new fee and a $595 still sounds like a lot to me to still be open.
Okay, I move that the board.
Mr.
approve-
Litz at
Oh, sorry. I had my head down.
Woodland Road. I was a little concerned about the notion that, we wanted to have fees for this that are competitive with other communities. I don't think that there's any competition. I mean, if you need a building permit for something in Southborough, you need a building permit for something in Southborough. And the fact you could get it cheaper in Marlborough doesn't help you, and vice versa. What I do think is that, we ought to be setting up fees on a cost recovery basis, because this is basically a service. This is not, I don't think it's an alternate source of revenue that we ought to be, focusing on. I think when we make the fees, every time we make the fees higher, we discourage someone with a small job or whatever from going through the process and actually getting the permit. So I would hope that the basis of this is not raising fees and not competition for higher or lower with other communities, but figuring out what does it cost us to offer this service and recovering those costs.
Okay. I mean, the way I read it, other than the introduction of the reopening fee and the lowering of the base fee, that the price relative to the total cost of construction, at least for building fees, was the same.
Yeah, I don't think there's many fees being increased here. The $50 is new. There's one being reduced.
Okay,
Mr. Lee, Mr. Cleary wants to talk.
I guess my point here is, do we know what it costs, to run that part of the building department? And do the fees cover it, exceed it, or are they less than that? Because I think that's the way we ought to be figuring out what the fees should be.
Mr. Cleary, you want to?
Well, he's coming up. Let me, as a former advisory member, at least answer Tim's question, not ignore it. So yes, we know what the cost of the department is because it's not a big department. It's pretty easy to figure out. So that part is yes. As far as trying to then establish fees whose purpose is to recover that cost, no, that's not how we've set fees. As far as I can remember, we've set fees, sometimes arbitrarily, sometimes we have asked that we've kept them that way a long time, and then we've decided to look at them, and we have definitely looked more at what other towns charge than trying to look at the cost of providing the service. So no, we have not done what you are suggesting that should be done.
Jim Caleri, Wire Inspector, for the town. A couple things that are missed on this is that on the electrical world, if you had your permit lapse, and we find it, and we're finding with even with the building and plumbing, we're finding a lot of these coming through because people selling their homes and they come in and, oh, you got to get my permit signed off, which they should have been signed off. Now, in the electrical world, it was addressed by the state years ago. So if you have a permit that's 3 years old and lapsed, because after 365 days, no activity, the permit is automatically lapsed. Unless you require an extension, which you can easily do. In that case, if the permit is lapsed, the homeowner would have to get that electrician back. They have to file a new permit at the cost of the permit. And the property then would have to be, brought to the code of the date, the new permit. That's Mass General Law, 143.3L. We have no choice in that matter. They find with a lot of the building in the rules and regulations that governing the building permit, the structural things, doesn't quite cover it that well. This would encourage, to me, contractors, they're going to be paying the fee. And this would encourage them to make sure that they get their final sign-offs and done. A lot of cities and towns are doing this for this very reason, because we're strapped with all of these houses being sold. And now we have to come in compliance and try to find out who did what. The building and the people have left maybe a year or 2 years before. So who knows what's come back in and done some work illegally on the property. So this is a good incentive, more than I think, in my opinion of it. And in that packet, you have the opportunity now to, Kathy, you said about the problem you had with your wiring permit, that you had to pay some more money. This will all be addressed in the permit process now. Great effort was made to correct that problem too. So I think it's a golden opportunity to help the citizens of the town make sure their contractors, as an incentive to the contractors, get yourself in there and call for your final permits. Call for your final inspections. And it's also for the protection of the property. I mean, people pay good money to have contractors work on their property. The last thing they want to do is have this contractor walk out, and then later on, somebody like me come in and say, oh, this is a gross violation of law or of the code, and put people at risk in their properties. So this is an incentive to also do that. I was really, that's why I came here tonight. I think it's a chance for Southborough to get some of this corrected and get it going in the right direction. Right now, we're seeing that in the building department. There's a great effort going on for education on our systems. Most of us are going out further beyond education that's required. And we also got a great staff in there working for us. And that's how you got to get this before you.
So before you go, one question, just to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that what you're supporting is the $50 reinstatement fee. You think that's the right thing to do when you say this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would, if I were a contractor, which I was a contractor and doing extensive work, fire and security work, if I knew I had to come to Southborough and pay a $50 fee, yeah, I'll get to do that once, because I'll remember not to do that the second time. And it also shows that the building department is waking up to this problem, is really aware of this problem, and is addressing this problem to solve it. And being on your electrical board for 10 years in the Commonwealth, the number one goal in following the process of rules and regulations and code is public safety. If that's what it's all about. And that's what this is all about. This is why it's so important that we get this ship going in the right direction.
Thanks.
Can I make one more comment to
Yes.
try to appease Mr. Litt? Tim? So, as far as trying to match the cost to this, of the permit, so we generate the revenue to support the department, your biggest permit generator is your building permits, right? I mean, those can be pretty stiff fees, and that's all going to go up and down depending on how much you're building in 1 year, whatever. So I don't know how we do what you want to do without changing the fees year to year. So I don't support doing that. I think you want people to know what the fees are, and I think you do reevaluate them periodically, which we weren't doing very well. So I do think we should do that, but trying to match the actual cost of department to the permits. And so that, you know, you offset, I think would be really difficult to do just because they go up and down so much.
And time reporting
Yeah.
to match, to track people's
Yeah.
time for things that you can bill for versus things that you can't really bill for, I think is a pretty substantial administrative challenge. So I'm not too troubled about the way it's operating.
And I also, not to go off too much on a tangent, but, I just confirmed with Mark, I had a memory that not last year, but one of the prior years where there was a request to increase hours for the part-time building inspector, that we arranged it so that there would, the fees from the building department, from the permits would on those additional hours.
There's a revolving fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does that,
Yeah.
yes.
I actually agree with Tim. You
But-
can't do it year to year, but what you should be, the question we should be asking is, say, over a 5-year period, how much money did we take in from fees? And that number ought to be reasonably close to how much it cost us to operate the building department.
But the building department does other things besides inspections. So I still think you're getting into a can of worms. if
Yeah,
you're gonna do this.
It's not perfect, but I think we ought to at least ask the question of how well aligned those two things are. And you know, I don't think it's a difficult.
No, it's
Has
not.
to do.
The revenue goes through local revenue. It's a number that's on the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
You just look at it.
there's,
And it's a few $100,000. So it's probably not that far away from truly paying for
Yeah.
the salaries in that department.
But I think that, first of all, the building department came up with this and it is in line what other communities are doing. And second of all, Mr. Cleary is right that the building department exists purely to provide safety to the residents of the town. And that's what it's supposed to be doing. It's not supposed to make cash. It's supposed to be a safety check. So that's what this is doing to me.
Have we reached at least for the fees
Yep.
for this year, these are all good points, but.
Yep.
I move that the board approve the new, building department scheduled fees for 2024.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed, none, so that passes. Thank you. I
Thank you
think
for
that
coming.
takes care of the consent agenda.
don't cross my line.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is, we've got in the packet, the first, I would have this very rough draft of the warrant for the annual town meeting on March 23rd at 10 a.m. You know, there were definitely some things in here where I was not as familiar with to see them here. The things which I had been kind of keeping track of to make sure they're a lot of them are here, like the PWPB, the authorization to bond pension obligations. One I was not sure was in here was a bylaw to automatically have the set aside in the CPC money for community housing go directly to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
So my understanding from council, the last time we talked about this is you cannot
Can't do
do
that.
an
Yeah.
article that authorized that. You can put one in every year to do that, but you cannot do one that authorizes. it in
Understood, but
perpetuity.
are we doing that in this year?
No,
No, okay,
so,
We
let's
should,
do it.
but we,
should.
yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Is that an article, we can put something in, but I believe that article is going to have to be generated by CPC.
Why does it have to be generated by CPC?
I'm not sure it does. So we should find out.
We should check that. Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is that the articles, I mean, if you're going to expend CPC funds, it needs to be approved by CPC. in order
That's
to go
different
to the
from
floor.
generating the article, I guess.
What's that?
That's different from generating the article.
Correct.
Okay, designation of scenic roads. I haven't looked at this one. What is that?
No,
New
no,
roads?
the index.
No,
Ignore
the index.
Okay.
Okay, so the problem, so if you have a warrant that
sorry.
looks like this, it's got a lot of red in it,
Okay.
because those are things that need to change. Obviously, all of those items after budget are going to have to be changed because they're all different.
So I whipped through this, I may miss it. Do we have the one in here to increase the tax work-off amount to 2,000 bucks?
Well,
and 20
because we
bucks an
don't
hour?
need to do that. That can simply be done by a vote of this board.
Okay, because Haggerty said we had to do it this way. When he came to us, when the law passed, when the state passed it, he said we gotta do it with an
My
article.
last understanding, the conversation between the principal assessor and the finance director is that it did not require.
Can you
vote.
confirm all that?
Yes.
Because we should definitely get that on.
Oh, absolutely. That's why it's not here.
Okay.
I will confirm that though.
Does anyone else have anything that they expect to see in the first draft of the warrant that they don't see?
We had talked about amending the charter for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to include management of projects. And also, maybe something about the appointment of Affordable Housing Trust Fund members.
Okay. That's a bigger item where we haven't really made a line.
Well, you know, we kind of dropped it. Last year, Ms. Brascio brought it up. She liked what West, she thinks the whole thing should have been reformatted, that, you know, the structure we have now is not working really well. And so she looked at Westboro and liked the way they did. They got it all mushed together in one entity. They don't have a separate SHOPSI from
As
funding
does
mechanism.
Lexington, I
And they
think,
use
yeah.
Lexington like that. So I think it's worth a discussion, as far, we may not get it done on this one, but maybe it's a special. We think we're gonna have a special right now. So we can start thinking about that too. But I do think it's worth a, you know, time spent to talk about whether there's a different structure that we really should,
Agreed.
you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I was looking at the index going, wait a minute. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, it is one of it's a much so far lighter warrant that we've had
It's early.
the last couple of years, but you're right, it is early. And consistent with past practice, does the board want to have invite sponsors of citizens petitions to come in, talk to us, kind of present their case and have that determine whether the select board wants to take a vote on, you know, support or not support before you can have it printed in the warrant, or to just do it at town meeting?
I do.
Yeah.
You know, last year we ended up with, you know, several that either didn't, you know, got taken off before we got to them that night, that long, long night. And I still think if we had worked harder, we could have worked with the proponents as far as trying to come to a different resolution as far as what they were trying to do. Many of those, as we know, had no force. They were just recommendations. So, you know, you got your, yeah, you're recommending, but it's not going to get it done. So I'm hoping that this year we can really try hard if we get some of those again to work in this meeting to resolve the issues.
Yeah.
And not take it to town meeting.
Okay,
I agree.
and I think that, I mean, that's a good segue to, so far, the only citizens petitions that we have are Mr. Palmer's citizens petitions that are all about South Union School. I mean, just reading them in preparation for this meeting, I think the text of one of them is already kind of outdated in that it's due to the action that we've taken with respect to the committee, that I think that some of the premises in the citizens petition are not totally up to date. So maybe if we bring them in and have a discussion about that, we'll see if, you know, we can work something out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Andrew, I guess my point probably to that is anything we can do to accelerate the town meeting process in advance to create better alignment of particularly citizen petitions and others. So requiring less discussion, debate at town meeting, I think would be helpful.
Yep, and I know everyone's saying it's still early, but you know, the fact that so far it looks like it could be kind of a lighter agenda for the town meeting, not necessarily a bad thing given the length of some of the prior town meetings.
Yep. Yep.
Hope is eternal, Andrew.
Yes. And I did have a conversation with Mr. Haggerty just before this meeting. One kind of preview of coming attractions is, so far he has not been able to work out how we would arrange food during the midday break for this. Apparently not able to, no success in getting something like food trucks or something like that. Has to do with the weather, I think, and so that's still,
Interesting.
yeah, that's still to be worked out. Okay. Should we move on and talk about the, and this is also, it was an idea that Jim had about the potential supermajority requirement for expenditures involving CPC projects to private property. Okay, and I know we kind of began discussing this at a prior meeting, but Sam, do you want to begin the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, this came out of most recently the St. Mark's Church bell tower conversation, a narrowly passed warrant article. And a lot of strong feelings on the negative side, people saying that we should not be spending town money on private projects. And I think the CPA Act gives flexibility there for things that have a public purpose that may be operating on town property. And in fact, we and many other towns actually spend a lot of money on private property from CPA funds. So it's not that it's, you know, without precedent, certainly. But I think there can be an argument made that maybe the barrier, the threshold should be a little higher for that. And I think it's a useful conversation to have. And there may be some chance that a citizen petition would pop up if it doesn't wind up on the warrant. So I think we're better off getting in front of that and giving people a chance to opine about that. I still waffle on it myself, as a matter of fact. But you know, two questions: should there be a higher threshold? And the second one, what should that threshold be? Should it be 2/3? Should it be 75%, 80%? Different thresholds for different things already out there. But interesting conversation. And again, I'm usually a fan of letting the voters decide on these things.
I am too, and I don't support this. I still think it should be a majority vote like everything else. And Sam's right. Let's reiterate, you know, the farm, 84 Main Street, the church. So, you know, we've done this several times. The first two, much more support than
Big
the
money
church.
too.
Yeah. So I just don't, I don't know, how this would turn out, but I'm not in favor of the select board sponsoring this article. If citizens wants to do it, then, you know, more power to them, but I have, no appetite to change that threshold for, non-publicly owned property projects.
Marguerite?
I think there were some possible projects in the pipeline that brought this to the attention of people who were concerned about it. That's the only thing. I don't know. I guess I agree with Kathy. Let the voters decide, but it is it's hard to get a 2/3 majority.
Mhm.
So that's, I'm just saying it's hard to do.
Al?
I think it has merit. I think that using public money on private property is somewhat is going to be potentially controversial, and I'm not sure we need to get to 2/3. I personally would live with 60%, but I think this is something that is worthy of putting before the voters to see if town meeting, how town meeting wants to proceed.
Yeah, my own view is probably closer to Kathy's in that, you know, I think if there was to be a threshold, I agree with you, Al, would be closer to 60% rather than, but it gets to the point where if you're suggesting a really just
Yeah.
a small super majority,
Yeah.
why not just have it? I mean, people are
Yeah.
smart enough to know that you can make the case at town meeting that this is not a wise expenditure because it involves an expenditure on private property. I had an interesting discussion about this with Ben Smith, the CPC chairman, who made a good observation that, you know, of the different buckets that you can use it on for a lot of historical preservation, there's a lot of historical assets that are privately owned, and that the practice of the CPC has been to require preservation restrictions before recommending CPC funds be used on private property. So
Mhm.
I think that's a fair balancing of it. And if there is a citizen's petition that comes, we just hear what that person has to say. Yes,
So one thing that is a characteristic of town meeting is stacking. Where, people show up for the single vote and, I don't begrudge them that it's their right, but, I kind of want to give a little extra push to the folks that show up for the whole 8 hours and, I think this is a conversation worth having.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that we're going to win. I've gone down in flames many times.
Mhm. But to Al's point, I think the stacking question is an interesting one, and that I think that this is the kind of thing that ought to have more broad participation and votes. So if we're organizing the agenda for town meeting, I'd put this early to have as many people as possible still around for it to get as broad an assessment. The other option, I actually, in a perfect world, I'd be interested in a non-binding vote from town meeting to see how people felt about this. And then depending on that, maybe come back at some later point with, or not, with a different view. I don't know.
I think we've got to see what CPC thinks about it too. I know we talked to Ben, but everybody else too. This is their bailiwick. So I'm sure they're gonna have opinions.
yes.
Trisha Burns Fiore. I would like to proactively speak heartily in favor of support of an article like this from the select board. I think there's an entirely different credence given to articles that are citizens petitions versus those that are supported by the select board, which most citizens petitions are not. I agree with what Al had to say in that one, we are looking at over the course of the last 10 years, a number of privately owned properties that have gone to CPC for funding, received it, some of those by a very close vote. And like Marguerite referenced, there are a couple on the current agenda for CPC that are seeking large, substantial amounts of public funding for private properties. This is a slippery slope. As we went through with some of those issues regarding the park and the land transfer, spending public money, taxpayer money on private property is very concerning to me. And I think it should be to everyone. I also agree with what Al said in regard to stacking. We certainly saw that at the last couple of town meetings where there was a very big Facebook presence for people telling people when to go to town meeting to vote on a specific article. That allowed things like the St. Mark's Tower to pass by one vote. If there was a supermajority involved in here, and that article did pass by that supermajority, that would prove to me that the majority of the town was interested in having that money proceed out of their taxes to pay for private property to be publicly funded. I think we need to see a clear delineation of where that money is spent and how it is accepted by the town. So I would like to see this article as part of the agenda for the town meeting, supported by the select board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had one
Mhm.
question. Since a lot of this will be for historical preservation, I'd like to hear from the chair of historical, just if, Kevin, if you have any thoughts on pro or con, or am I putting you in a bad position here?
Kevin has thoughts on everything, so he's ready.
Sam. Yeah, Kevin Miller, 18 Lattisquama, Chair of the Historical Commission. I do have thoughts on this, although they're not, I'm open to persuasion. But my gut is actually in support of that. I'm not sure if 2/3 is right or 3/5. I think as Al said, 60% is a more reasonable threshold. But I personally, and I don't speak on behalf of the commission, we haven't taken it up. So these are just my personal thoughts that I see some merit in a somewhat higher threshold for projects undertaken on private property. And I don't think, for instance, 3/5, a 60% margin is that onerous a barrier, but it gives that little bit extra so that people feel that the expenditure of public funds on, preservation of private property, that stronger level of support is something that I'm personally inclined toward, although again, I'm open to a robust discussion on the topic. So that's all I got. Sorry.
Helpful, thank you.
All right, so as the next step, do you think it makes sense? We'll follow up with CPC and see what their views are? Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
What is the deadline for this petition?
Before the warrant closes.
For the bylaw, I believe it was 30 days prior to the town meeting date.
which is March 23rd.
So it's pretty late.
Yeah, after the warrant closes.
Remember, we thought it, we were wrong. We thought it was a certain time and then Jay corrected us. So you got a long time before. it closes.
Okay. So the next item on our agenda is the budget summit with advisory on this Saturday. There's a schedule that we agreed on in the packet. It's pretty straightforward here. The format is we're gonna first have a presentation in the morning from Capital, and I saw on the their posted agenda, they're finalizing their presentation tomorrow. Okay. And then we're gonna have IT, police, fire, DPW, and schools if able. No? Okay.
Yeah, I think that given the timing for the schools knowing the numbers.
Yeah.
It just,
They need to have that first vote. So they can.
yeah,
And this is a consequence of us coming in very early for
This
this.
is early.
It is.
Well, part of that was the timing of,
I know, but if you take that week off to this New Year's and then you're still trying to, so I'm doing my 2 meetings this week.
Yep, yep. I did, Marguerite and I met with fire, with Chief Achilles last week. That looks very straightforward because it's just a proposed increase of 4%. All it really did was, Chief Achilles kind of budgeted a lot of items based on actuals over the last couple of years, so it's just more accurate, and which results in some items going down, some going up slightly. So there's not really that much controversy on that. And then Al and I are meeting with our Rose, and I believe Andrew Pfaff is going to be there too. It's not until Friday morning we're meeting, and that's obviously a significant one.
Cutting it close.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been difficult to schedule. Yeah,
That's fine. This-
Mhm.
this-
yeah. Okay, so I don't know what more there really is to you said about that. Do you know what the plan is there for nourishment for that too, or we'll be all set?
Nourishment is probably gonna be pizza
Okay,
and maybe some things
Water there.
to nibble on.
Drinks.
okay.
bring my own peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, the less we give you, the shorter it will be.
Oh, that's a good way. Yes.
No water, no food,
It's like why all the seats in church are uncomfortable.
turn the heat up.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll take care of you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is this naming of this could be one of the last times it's referred to as the St. Mark's Street Park.
We hope.
Because when this whole thing began, a long time ago.
You and Marguerite were young.
That when Marguerite were on the working group with Kevin and James that we talked about what a bad name to be calling it. So, a while back, at the last meeting of the St. Mark Street Park working group, the working group recommended to the select board that it be called Heritage Park. And I remember sitting in on those discussions. What do people think of this name?
So it's my, well, first of all, remember the
Yep.
charge working group was to suggest a name, so you did your
Yes.
job, right?
Yep.
It's my understanding, but Marguerite, correct me, you were the chair, the vote was 4-1 for Southborough Heritage Park? With Bill Sign wanting maybe something different? 5-1? Okay, that's even better, right? And I assume 2 of 4 of the 5 are sitting here tonight?
I don't think I was at that meeting.
Okay, so 3 of the 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry. James has it up on his screen when, that was what, 28th June, was it? June 28th, it was voted that we liked that, and I think Historical also voted to support that name. 5-0, yeah.
So I think it's a nice name, and just from, it's a pleasure walking around that space now and seeing the, very.
The wall is beautiful. They
Yes.
did a outstanding job on that wall.
So, and there's a lot of kind of, content that can still be filled in terms of maybe dedicating trees and
Benches.
particular people, benches, things like that.
We've got
Also-
requests coming forward for a bench naming next time.
And that, we have, there's still work to be done. And one of the original ideas of this was to have a place where there can be some historical markers or things like that, so it can be, have an educational purpose as well. And then maybe this is something Historical Commission can help out on as well over the next year or two. I mean, to cut back on the price of it, remember, there was a sundial that was supposed to be in one of the circles that we intentionally took out. I think that helped get the price under the price that we needed it to, but also to have this, once we've got this space laid out, to get some thought about, is there something else we want to put there or something like that?
Marguerite, was the vote Southborough Heritage Park or Heritage Park?
Yeah, sure. I think it was just Heritage Park.
This is what I came for, so. Thanks for the other question, but, yeah, we had recommended Southborough Heritage Park. And just for some context, there are, 6 municipal parks in Massachusetts that use the name Heritage. Closest would be Upton Heritage Park. There are also 8 state parks that use the word heritage. For instance, Lawrence Heritage State Park, Blackstone River and Canal Heritage State Park. So so I thought part of the reason the Historical Commission recommended using Southborough in the name is that we're really talking about Southborough's heritage. And again, the reason that we had initially, come upon this name was that we'd hoped to embrace all the components of that site's long and fairly complex history. So, the Nipmuc history, the colonial settlement history, the history of the town's incorporation, the story of William Washington, which, some of you have heard a little bit about, which we're quite interested in, and the, 750 artifacts that were recovered from the site and that I hope to see displayed at Bayville Hall sometime in the future, at least some of them. So we thought that was a name that would incorporate all aspects of Southborough history. The other last thing I'd say to you is that this October will be the 50th Heritage Day celebration in Southborough. So it really lines up beautifully. Presumably the park gets done this summer, and then we can all come together on a nice fall day in October and celebrate Heritage Day partly at Southborough Heritage Park. Thanks.
That makes sense to me.
Sounds good.
I think Marguerite should make the motion.
Okay.
I move that the select board support the name Southborough Heritage Park for the new park in the middle of town.
Second. All those in favor? All those against?
Committee members have reached closure.
Yes.
I did have one question. I'm curious about what the benches will look like, but I don't suppose that's a discussion for here, is it?
We need a committee.
We need
Do a committee for
Zeb, you're right,
bench
a
committee.
bench committee. Thank you. Okay.
We've got 4 volunteers here, I think.
Okay. I think this, Are we done with this discussion?
Yeah, we'll probably have to figure out where the signs are gonna be, but we can do that later.
Yes.
That's a detail.
Andrew, I make one editorial comment here as well. I've made it a point to actually drive by the library during a couple of the recent rainstorms, which have been substantial. And the former puddling problem at the bottom of the library parking lot there by the door, I saw no evidence of. That everything seemed to be working fine. Marguerite, I'm assuming that that's the view of the library management group.
Not a drop came in from the way it used to flood.
So
So
that
really
to
good.
me is the sort of the icing on the cake here as far as the real reason that I got interested in this a number of years ago. And so that's to me, great news that is going to save us a lot of money and headache going forward. So excited to see that result.
Excellent. Okay, the last item we have on our open session agenda is consideration of intermunicipal agreement for Algonquin Athletic Complex project. Marguerite, do you wanna, I'm sorry, Kathy, do you wanna give our intro to this or?
Yeah, this one's easy.
Okay, sure.
Okay. And
Although I did have before you had mentioned some questions about the numbers in there. and I-
they're slightly
anything
off.
within-
And so, but I know there's a reason. So I'd say let's go ahead and vote it. I'll make sure they're right. I worked with them on this thing, so there's just a couple questions I've got, but long story short, Barry recalls that I believe Article 14 on the warrant last year provided CPA funds to pay for our portion of the tennis courts, the basketball courts, and the pickleball courts. $218,000 or so was the amount of the article. Northborough chose not to do it that way, so we then had an issue because the agreement with Northborough that we've signed as far as how we share the Algonquin expenses is fixed as far as what you do. And so without this, we would basically be paying for it twice. So this basically fixes that. It basically separates the cost of those courts so that there's one bond that's being floated that will pay for Northborough share, and they get allocated that entire amount. We've paid for our piece of it, so we're done. So this is definitely the right thing to do and fixes the problem that we would have had without this. Jay Tylerman has looked at it. He's agreed with it. So I think we're ready to go here as far as voting on this. So
But if
that
the numbers are a little different, do we vote
it's
to within a X $1,000s or?
I actually think they're
adjust?
right, Sam. I just need her to answer. And I tried to get hold of Becky Pellegrino today once I saw that and I couldn't. But I will, but I'm pretty sure they're right because we went over these. The debt is shared different percentages depending on the population from the
Right.
previous October 1st. So I think we've got 2 October 1st in this, and that's why you see I'm talking, 0.6%
Right.
here.
Yeah,
So it's really,
my question was simply that do we approve this if we're going to approve it? Subject to amendment within, $2,000 or some small amount to make the numbers exactly if necessary.
or we approve it
Sure.
subject to my confirming with Becky that the numbers are correct. And I think, I'm trying to tell you, I think they are.
Okay,
I just want to make sure that I understand one little aspect here.
worst case is we come back and vote it again next meeting or whatever, if it's not exactly right. I guess.
So do you want to make the motion or Sam?
Kathy,
Okay,
I'm gonna make it, I think.
So I'll make the motion to approve the proposed intermunicipal agreement that deals with the issue of the funding of the Algonquin tennis courts, pickleball courts, and basketball courts.
Second,
all those in favor? Those opposed? Okay. Last item on the open session agenda is public comment. Okay. Seeing none.
no hands up.
No hands up. Okay. I move that the board enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, and not returning to open session for the following purpose: to review and approve executive session minutes from December 5, 2023.
Second,
Roll call vote. Okay, Dennington, aye.
Okay.
Stivers, aye.
Thank you.
So is that office here tonight?
He was just here during the meeting, but.
Okay, who's going to do this?